You've been hurt. No, that's horrible. You've been hurt. You've been violated, and you're in immense physical and emotional pain. The question is now, do you go pursue justice? Do you press charges? And what are the pros and cons of both?
Welcome to the Stop Suffering in Silence podcast with your host, Denise Walsh and Rachel Timothy.
All right, Rachel. So this is an important conversation that we hear a lot when we talk to survivors, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assaults, lots of different experiences people have had in the past. And they come to us and sometimes they ask, should I press charges? Should I not press charges? Is it going to help anyway? What should we do? And so today we thought we would go through just in general, the pros and cons of pressing criminal charges, what that really looks like, the pros and cons of pressing civil charges. And not that we're lawyers or in the legal system at all. I'm a clinical psychologist and Rachel is a trafficking survivor, but she's been through the process. And I think that we'll have a lot to add to the conversation from a victim's perspective. So, Rachel, how should we kick this off?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking a lot of times when survivors make it to us, they've already been through the initial violation, whatever that looked like, and the initial, you have the first 24, 48 hours to make that initial decision. Do I want to press charges? And it's usually when they come to us, it's long past that. And they've already experienced being completely let down by the system or not feeling in that moment like they could have pressed charges. And they're at this point where they almost feel like there is no options, only to find out maybe there are a few other options for justice. And then do I go back and do I relive and do I pursue all of that again? Am I strong enough? Will the system back me up? Will I have the support I need to get through it? And is it really worth it? And I just think that's some of the questions that we hear when the girls reach us at that point.
Yeah, it's going to open up a can of worms.
Yeah.
It's going to open up things that you haven't talked about or thought about. You're going to be asked questions. But I know you have pursued civil and criminal charges down the line. And there are very different systems. And I think that's interesting information to know as well. For example, if you pursue criminal charges, then the evidence needs to leave without a shadow of a doubt, right? 99% like certainty that jury has to say no reasonable doubt is there. So the evidence needs to be stronger. A lot of times this is where DNA and more harder evidence is requested and required. But yet in the civil world, you just need to be 51%, right? Can you tell me about the difference that you've learned?
Yeah, for the most part, that's it. It's like 50.1% likelihood in a civil suit, which is helpful when years have passed. Some of the hard evidence is no longer around, but there's still evidence. There's still facts that point to the fact that it did happen. And, you've got people who witness things. You've got people who have experienced similar things that are able to come forward and validate what you went through. But again, what else is hard is it's not just you walking back into this case. You need other people to walk it with you. You need other people to walk beside you and say, I saw this, I saw that, I experienced this or that. And there's just an array of challenges that that you'll face.
Right. And I think it can feel like a huge mountain, obviously, right at the beginning, right? It feels like, can I even walk down this road? It feels huge. It feels like you're opening up a can of worms. Can I emotionally handle it? Is it going to be very disruptive to my life? Do I want to bring in other witnesses, teachers, friends, parents, family members? Do we want to go down this path.
Yeah.
But what you found is that even though the steps are hard, you've been able to look back and deem it worth it. Can you tell us more about what the fears were at the beginning and then the growth opportunities along the way?
Yeah. So I remember when I first started, I was nowhere near where I'm at now in the healing journey. And you need to have people who can see you 4 or 5 years ahead, because as the process of the justice goes along, you're healing, you're growing, and you're getting stronger to where at the very end, when the hardest like trial comes, they can see you there. They can see you prepared and ready for that. But I remember going into this truly with the mindset of, God, open the door if this is what you want me to walk through, or please, please shut this door if you don't want me to walk through it. And I think everybody individually has to ask that question, because I don't think in all situations is it the same. And so for me, doors began to open, and it wasn't like, you know, everything made sense, but it was like that next step, that next door was opened. And so I walked through it. And then another door was opened and I walked through it. And another, yes, it was, I began to see myself grow. I began to see myself enter into a very hard space, a very, it is not compassionate for the most part to a victim. And you're not going to get like those easy conversations with a therapist where, they're understanding. They're like, well, we'll just talk about this next week. Or, like you're in a space where you've got to deal with the hardest thing that you've ever been through. And there's compassion in a sense, but I mean, it's the legal world. It's just different. And so sitting in those chairs and having conversations and pulling out some of the evidence, I did things that I never thought I could do. I was able to speak things I never thought I'd be able to speak. And there's a confidence that grows in that. There's a strength that grows from that. And God, I think, has given me the strength as he continues to open each door. But I can stand here today more healed, I believe, because I did say yes as those doors opened. I did face those battles head on and have seen myself grow as a result.
We were talking through one of your latest court updates a few months ago, and you said something like, I wish survivors knew how much strength they would gain in the process, because it feels so overwhelming that it's very typical to shut down and be like, heck no, I'm not opening up that can of worms. I'm not going down that path. But if survivors knew how much strength and healing would come because of talking about the things that are the deep, dark secrets that they never thought they would, gaining evidence and witnesses and other corroborating experiences that help validate being believed by those who are representing you in the court system, and getting a chance to share your story and expand the reach of who knows about what's happening here has been priceless. Now, I know you've had a different experience between the civil and the criminal side of things. What experiences did you have?
I feel like for the most part, criminally, when I began pursuing that, I was dealing with a lot of just not informed law enforcement, or things going missing, things just not adding up as far as how their investigation was taking place. I would come across some really amazing law enforcement, and then somebody else would step in and things would, get pushed aside. And so just feeling betrayed by the system and abandoned by the system. And whether it was purposeful or not, I don't know. But I just know that they were not informed. They were not trauma informed. They were not aware of what trafficking can look like. Whereas whenever I was able to, when God opened the door to a lawyer with my civil suit, he came at it with the approach of, I'm not saying I know everything, but I'm telling you I'm going to learn, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to understand. And he has taken extra classes and brought in counselors and psychologists for him and his staff to become trauma informed and to learn more about how to interact with a survivor. And that piece alone has made this civil suit 1,000 times easier, because he can get it. He can understand better. He can respond to me better. He doesn't judge me. It's just different. So I'm certain not all lawyers are that way, but I think you're able to find those that are, and that makes a big difference.
So it sounds like in the criminal world, you had a detective at the police office that had a million other cases that would be kind of the evidence gatherer for your case. And the detectives were the ones that either weren't gathering the evidence or losing the evidence, or it was just getting pushed aside because they have other folders on their desk. Whereas on the civil side of things, you're working with a lawyer who's choosing to take on your case, who's invested in the outcome, who has the resources to go gather the evidence, to pull reports and files and things from hospitals and all the same types of potential, that the detective does, but they are requesting all of that stuff too, and they put it together in a file that then they pursue the civil suit with. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And so you're in the criminal side never even really got to the trial phase because there was no real detective that could hang on to your case long enough to take it through.
Yeah, to a degree. And then, you'd have state's attorney, or you'd have those higher up that would say, this is not something I want my law enforcement team to look into. And so then their hands are tied. There's nothing more that they could do. And that, it comes back to them just not being informed at what this looks like. And it's easy to classify somebody with extreme trauma as crazy. They're nuts, and not look into it further. That's the easy route, in my opinion. But there's a reason that all this extreme stuff was coming out of my mouth. It's not just in my head. And being able to have a state's attorney that says, okay, there's something going on here, we need to look into it, would have made a big difference.
Right. So if somebody is just getting out of an abusive relationship, or they have been violated maybe even a few years ago, whether it's chronic and consistent or it was a one-time thing, but yet they're not sleeping at night and they're ruminating on it, and flashbacks continue to pop up, it's absolutely still impacting their life. Number one, we would always say, go to a therapist and have support. Like, you don't want to walk any part of this journey alone. But what parts of the journey would you say have been the most helpful to you, and why was it healing? I want to give hope to the person who's curious about making that step, but nervous and afraid.
Yeah. I remember being told from the get-go that, your deposition is probably going to be the hardest piece of it. And being terrified, truly, like believing, I can't do this. There's no way. I'm not strong.
And a deposition is when basically it's like pre-trial, and it's where the defense and the prosecution get to ask you a ton of questions, so they kind of know what you would say at trial. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. And for my particular case, I don't know if this is the case for all, but it was 7 hours. And I didn't see it as possible. And not only did I get through it, I was able to speak my truth. And they went right up to that last second of 7 hours, and I was able to tell my story. I was able to tell what I went through. And it was a miracle, but God gave me the strength to get through it. And it grew my faith like you would not believe, to be able to it felt like going into a battle. Literally, it felt like going into battle, and God gave me the weapons I needed and gave me the strength I needed to get through it. And when God does that for you in a period where there seems no way out, it just grows your faith. It grows your strength. It helps you realize, like, with God, all things are possible. And those are things that I needed, as a victim who had been violated, who had been let down and betrayed by so many growing up. And things should have looked differently. To be able to then feel God fight for me in that moment and give me the strength, it changed the direction of my life. It changed the direction of my faith. And I had faith going in, but when you experience God in that way and you allow him to work in that way, it changes you.
Yeah. It's doing the hard thing that grows your inner strength and your confidence and your faith. And so, and again, not that it's the right choice for everybody, but what I will say is everybody deserves to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And if your perpetrator is still out there, it's not only is it can be scary for you personally, but also we know that perpetrators never have one victim. So there's typically a line of girls or men, essentially, right, who are being victimized by this one perpetrator. And so putting them away, getting their story out, helping other survivors and other future victims down the road has been what has kept you going.
Yeah, there's a ripple effect that I didn't realize would be there. My light just fell down. Sorry. But yeah, no, there's a ripple effect that God continues to use, and with people that it impacts, but then with myself as well. So like there's times when I can look back and see how far I've come. I've been doing this recently. I'm like, wow, I've come a really long way. But there are still moments where I'm like, wow, I have so far yet to go in this healing journey. There's still so much I don't understand or I'm still healing from. But having those moments where you can look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember God getting me through that. I know he can get me through this.
Right. And I think that those would be that would be what I would recommend to anybody who's looking for justice, whether it's criminally or civilly. Well, sometimes if the criminal justice system is not working, meaning like they're not picking up your case or they're not taking it as seriously, civilly is an option. Filing a case civilly is the only way in our society that we can legally say, like, all right, like eye for an eye, like I get to be compensated because you injured me, you hurt me, you violated me, and it makes sense. And so, number one, make sure you have support. So I know you didn't just choose this on your own. You also talked to your support system and you said, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? You got their buy-in, but you also had their support for you to call and have connection throughout the process. And then keep the end in mind, right? Like remembering how far you've come to even get to this point to be ready to press charges. But then also keeping in mind how far you will continue to grow. Yeah. I think the thing we often do is we say, all right, take a look back 3 months, 6 months, how far have you gone, right? We do this a lot with our survivors to recognize and honor the growth journey. And so know that you'll experience that too. In another 3 months, in another 6 months, you'll be just even that further on your healing journey. And you can look back and see how far you've come. And the more you do those hard steps, the more you're able to see God show up in miracle and in beautiful ways. And those can be added to that confidence list too.
Yes. Yeah. I remember at one of our first retreats, you had us do an exercise where we walked the steps of whatever hard thing we were trying to overcome. And for me, it was court. And in each step that I would take, I would envision the next step of court and then the next and the next, and being able to visualize walking that and being strong in that helped me when the moment came, like, hey, I've been there, done this. I can do this.
You can do this.
And that was powerful, keeping the end in mind.
Anything else that you would say to somebody who's curious about pressing charges or pursuing justice?
I'm at the point right now where I don't know, my midway. It's really hard to say. Could be near the end. You just don't know. But there's been so much that I've learned that had been kept hidden from me, you know, as a child or whatever, that has come out as a result of this, that I feel like my ultimate prayer of the truth being told, the truth being known, is already coming to light. And so to me, that's a win. I have no idea how this will all turn out or what God has in store, but I see the win in it already. And that helps me keep going and knowing God is in this.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We've got a few cool things up the Stop SIS sleeve, including currently we're launching a fundraiser to help share Rachel's story in a professional way. This will be done by a producer that has done Netflix videos down the road, like in the past, and is a very professional opportunity to share Rachel's story in churches, in schools, in police stations, that will help people understand what trafficking can look like in the United States and beyond, but then also what the healing journey and what a trauma survivor looks like and how to handle somebody who's experienced chronic trauma and really how to support them through this journey the best that they can. And so if you are interested or willing to be a part of our professional video journey, we are currently in the midst of a fundraiser for that. And we'll put the link in the show notes for that. Anything that you raise, right, or that we raise in the next 30 days will be geared towards the video project. And our goal is to raise at least $10,000 for that project to be completed.
Yeah, it's going to be basically like a short film. To walk you through the experience, which will be super important for kids to see.
Now, will this be like actors or
Yes.
will this be more documentary style?
No, they'll be actors.
Ooh,
I know, right?
Yeah, this will be fascinating.
Yep.
And I think one thing that is, we always get this in our talks, but one of the things that we hear a lot and you speak on a lot when you are speaking in locations is the grooming process. Mm-hmm. And I think that process alone being shown and depicted in films will be mind-blowing to not just kids who see it, but also adults who have been victimized and realizing, oh my gosh, it wasn't my fault. I was tricked too.
Oh, exactly. That's what we hear the most is it was grooming. It's not my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this journey with us. If you've got any questions for myself or Rachel or any topics you'd like to see us discuss, please put them in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, all of the YouTube-y things, and share this with somebody who you know is contemplating or considering pressing charges in their own experience. We'd love to support them on their journey and hope that this was helpful. So have an amazing day, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your event, workshop, school, church, or organization, then please email racheltimothy.stopsis@gmail.com. If you are interested in donating to the Stop SIS ministry, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below. Or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence or you know somebody who is, then check out our website, stopsuffering.org, to learn more about our online programs and resources. We will always recommend that you also reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.